Hello, third graders, and welcome back. My name is Anita, and I will be your virtual teacher today. Join me in today's lesson. As you can see, the topic is Mount Everest. U današnjoj lekciji učenici će slušati tekst o Mount Everestu, razvijati svoje potencijale te upravljati emocijama i ponašanjem. As for any lesson so far, you'll need just regular stuff, your notebook or a piece of paper, a pen or a pencil, and your smartphone or laptop or personal computer connected to the internet. I hope you'll enjoy watching this video lesson as much as I enjoyed preparing it. So let's start. So if you were given the day off school, no schoolwork, no homework, no video lessons, nothing, but there is always a but. Under one condition, you have to spend the day outdoors and you are given two options to choose from. This one, or this one. Which one would you choose, the former or the latter? Believe it or not, there are people who would go for the latter, me being one of them. I can still remember the climb you have just seen. Harsh wind and terrible weather conditions during the climb. I ended up with a bruise on my cheek and my skin literally peeled off a couple of days later. But I also remember how great I felt when I reached the summit. So, why do people choose to go to the mountains in the first place? Any idea? Try to think of at least 5 reasons. So, it's time to compare our lists. People go to the mountains because mountains offer serious benefits to our physical and mental health. They also go to the mountains to enjoy peacefulness and tranquility. Have you ever listened to silence? It's great, believe me. People also go to the mountains because they offer breathtaking and magnificent views very few get to see. Avalanches, thunderstorms, blizzards just remind us of how vulnerable and tiny we are. So people go to the mountains to become better in every aspect of the word. People go to the mountains because mountains teach us to be patient, persistent, and grateful. So if you've climbed a mountain, it's not because you decided to climb it. It's because the mountain decided to let you climb it. And finally, everybody can go to the beach, right? And the mountains, it's not the case. Going to the mountains is a dangerous and risky business, especially in winter. And if you're not equipped with the right gear, you're literally putting your life at risk. Here you can see just a part of the mountaineering gear. Your task is to match the photos from the column on the left with the words on the right side. After you match the photos and the words, I have another task for you. Look at these photos which show two mountaineers while descending a steep snow slope. These photos will help you describe what each piece of equipment is used for. You can pause the video and do the task. If you've done it, we can check your answers. So this is an ice axe. An ice axe is used when ascending or descending steep routes with snow or ice. This is helmet. A helmet protects your head, which in turn protects your brain. It prevents head injuries. These are goggles. Goggles provide protection for your eyes, and they protect you from snow blindness too. These are crampons. Crampons are attached to footwear and are used for secure travel on snow and ice. Walking on icy surfaces without crampons can be compared to jumping out of an airplane with no parachute. And finally, these are mountaineering gloves. At extremely low temperatures, blood stops reaching fingers and toes. They are used to prevent frostbite. There is a huge difference between the modern gear mountaineers use today and the gear that was used 50 or 60 years ago. Thanks to modern equipment, climbing the world's highest mountain has changed dramatically. And what about the top of the world? Can you imagine what it was like to climb the world's highest mountain with early versions of climbing gear that just resemble what climbers use on the mountain today? Watch a short video about Mount Everest and the first people to summit it. While listening to the text, try to fill in the missing pieces of information from Everest's identity card you can see on this slide. Ready? Here is the text.
Mount Everest, at 29,028 feet, or 8,848 meters, it is the highest point on Earth. Located in the Himalayas, an old Sanskrit word meaning abode of snow, it sits on the border between Tibet and Nepal. The Tibetan call it Chomolungma, or Goddess Mother of the World, while the Nepalese call it Sagarmatha, meaning forehead in the sky. The first recorded attempt to climb Everest was made in 1921 by a British expedition. They didn't make it to the summit due to a raging storm, but one of the mountaineers named George Lee Mallory had seen what appeared to be a feasible route up the peak. Once asked by a journalist why he wanted to climb Everest, he quipped, "Because it's there." Eventually, he stayed there for good. In 1999, Mallory's largely preserved body was found high on Everest. Whether or not he'd reached the summit remains a mystery. There had been 6 unsuccessful expeditions prior to the 1953 expedition. And then, on May 29, 1953, Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay became the first people to set foot onto the highest point on Earth. Tenzing Norgay, of Tibetan Nepali descent, dreamt of becoming the first man on Everest. It is believed that when he was a baby, a holy man said he was destined for great things, and that this was when he was given the name Norgay, meaning fortunate one. As a child, he practiced by carrying rocks in his backpack, up and down Mount Everest. Edmund Hillary was the Kiwi climber who devoted much of his life to supporting the Sherpa community. This legendary philanthropist was well known for his humility and generosity. He raised funds and built schools, hospitals, and other facilities in the mountains. People in his homeland get to see him almost every day because his face beams out of a $5 note.
And here is the answer key. Elevation, 29,028 feet or 8,848 meters. Mountain range, the Himalayas, name Chomolungma or Goddess Mother of the World, Sagarmatha or forehead in the sky, continent, Asia, country, Tibet and Nepal, first attempt of ascent in 1921 by a British expedition. First successful ascent and descent in 1953 by Tenzing Norgay of Nepali-Tibetan descent and Edmund Hillary from New Zealand. Did you notice the word descent in the last sentence? So, first successful ascent and descent in 1953 by Tenzing Norgay of Nepali-Tibetan descent. A wonderful example, a perfect example of how the semantic of a word may shift to carry on completely new meanings. So you saw what it looked like almost 70 years ago. It's great to see a dream come true. And now let's watch a short video about a mountaineer who, just like Tenzing Norgay, dreamt of climbing Everest when he was a kid.
Straddling the border of Nepal and Tibet lies Mount Everest, the tallest peak on Earth, 29,035 feet. For over 100 years, Mount Everest has captured the world's imagination. It captured my attention as a young kid, reading books on Everest pioneers Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary. Climbing it myself was almost beyond my imagination.
And finally, in 2001, aged 33, his childhood dream came true. Now you'll see a short video about the final hours before this mountaineer set foot on top of the world.
At the south summit, you're at 28,700 feet. You're only 300 feet from the true summit. But you're still a couple hours away. You have to defy your survival instinct and climb down the backside of the south summit and across the knife edge ridge. The last obstacle before the summit is the Hillary Step, a 50-foot vertical climb. I belly flop my way over the top. From here, I'm just at half an hour from the summit. At this extreme altitude, I'm taking 6 breaths between each step, and I feel like I'm running a marathon with a plastic bag over my head.
And here is another task for you. There are 3 questions you have to answer. The first question is, what is the last obstacle before reaching the summit? The second question is, who was it named after? And the third question is, what were 2 major problems for him at such high altitude? Think about the questions, and here are the answers. The last obstacle before reaching the summit is the Hillary Step, a 50-foot vertical climb. It was named after Sir Edmund Hillary, one of the 2 men who first set foot on top of the world. And 2 major problems for him at such high altitude were defying survival instinct and lack of oxygen. But that's not the end of this task. Now I'd like to ask you to choose one adjective which best describes Erik Weihenmayer. It's his name, Erik Weihenmayer. Remember it. I'm sure you'll want to find out more about him as soon as the lesson finishes. Which adjective would you choose? For example, brave, courageous, intrepid, adventurous, insane, fearless, persistent, or determined. So, is the adjective you chose among these? Erik is indeed brave, courageous, intrepid, and blind. He is the first blind person to climb Mount Everest. And not just Mount Everest, he has also completed the 7 summits, the highest point on every continent, and his accomplishments seem surreal, impossible even. And now read the headline of the newspaper article from The Guardian. What does it say? Nepal bans people and double amputees from climbing Everest. And there are 2 questions I'd like to ask you. The first question is disability an obstacle to success? And the second question is discrimination a bigger obstacle to success than any disability? This time, I won't suggest any answers. I'll leave them to you, but I'll just ask you to think deeply about them. So we've come to the end of the lesson, and we are approaching the end of the school year too. Before we finish the lesson, I'd kindly ask you to write down 3 things from the lesson you were surprised by, 2 things you would like to know more about, and 1 thing you would like to accomplish in your life, although it seems hardly achievable, your personal Everest. So this year has been anything but usual. It has been challenging both for students and teachers. And preparing these online lessons has been a real pleasure, but hard work too. I've contacted many people to get permission to reuse their materials, and Eric Weinmeier was one of them. I texted him and I asked him to give me permission to share his videos and photos. And this is what he texted back. Thank you for asking. I'd be honored. As a former teacher, I can imagine how challenging this situation is. Thanks for all you do, for sharing my story, and for encouraging your students to share theirs. Stay well and take care. So please remember, no matter how high you climb, never forget to help others. Stay humble. Great people don't go through life collecting recognition. They go through life giving it away. Bye, and stay tuned for just one more slide, the best part of the whole lesson.
After 3 months on the mountain and half a lifetime of preparation, with the help of a great team and with thousands of blind people cheering me on, I'm finally here.
You're on the top. I can't believe it. We're only halfway there, guys.
Good job, Nick.
Thank you.
Good job, buddy. You did it. You did it.
I think some people almost don't believe it. You know, they think maybe somehow he cheated, you know, by getting up there. Or someone carried him up there. I think probably some people think, oh, well, you know, must not be hard then. Must not be very hard then. Other people probably just don't know what to think. They just can't connect the idea of a blind person and Mount Everest. I think overall what it has to do over time is it doesn't shape people's perceptions. I think it shatters them. I think it takes people's perceptions of what's right and what's possible, and it shatters them into a million pieces. And I think that's what's really cool, because then when people have to rebuild their perceptions about what's possible, it's bigger.